Bravo bosses. This is the Bravo Investigator podcast. I'm your host, Dana, and today we are recapping Summer House. We're talking about Amanda Batula's interview with Marie Claire, and I am also recapping my event with Hey You and Jesse Solomon and Lindsay Hubbard. Let's get into it. Happy Wednesday, everyone. I hope everyone's had a great week so far. I had an in-office day today and I had a late night last night, so I am feeling pretty tired, but I was like, I have to let the BBs know about my event with Lindsay and Jesse. So I'm so excited to tell you guys about it. I know I hinted at it a bit on the weekend. I was like, oh, I might be going to an event with some people who are on a show that we all love. And then I told you that I would let you know what it was on the reality roundup on Monday. And then I forgot. And to be honest, I wanted to make sure like it was actually happening before I actually told you guys. I was worried I might be disinvited. Who even knows? But it was so amazing. So basically, I was invited by Hey You, and Jesse Solomon and Lindsay Hubbard were in Toronto for press. That was it. So they're doing a ton of press over the next few days. And basically, the event was a dinner with Jesse and Lindsay, as well as like a meet and greet. And then we got to watch a screening of Summer House. So it was really, really cool. When I got there, there was only like a few people there. I always show up early to everything. And I just got to talk to a lot of people from Hey You, PR reps and marketing people, which was really great because Hey You is kind of our main streaming service in Canada for reality TV. And Hey You are the people who set up press for when Bravo Lebs come to Toronto and stuff. So any insight and any in I can get with Hey You is such a big deal because they're the ones who set up these interviews with Bravo Lebs and stuff. So it was really good to connect in that regard. I also just ended up meeting so many amazing Toronto influencers who I've seen around, but I've never been able to talk to, a lot of whom have never responded to me, quite frankly, when I've reached out to them. So it was nice to be in a room with sort of all of these people who I felt could sort of help me if need be, because I feel like I have all of these amazing contacts in the US, but not in Canada. And my podcast and my Instagram account are mostly American, or American like followers, American listeners and stuff. So it's been hard for me to sort of grow my brand where I live because I don't have any Canadian contacts. So it was just so nice to be able to connect with all of these amazing Canadian influencers who are also into Bravo. I made so many new friends there. And so many of them said that they ended up making friends with each other through these Hey You events. So I hope that I get invited to more of these because, again, I just want to like network more and connect with these people so that I can, figure myself out in this industry, which is still something that I want to do. So yeah, Lindsay was wearing like this maroon colored leather dress and above the knee black boots. She looked so pretty. She had her hair straight with her little bob. And so my friend Callie and I from the In3 podcast, we were just chatting with Lindsay for a bit. I didn't tell her who I was. Like I said, hi, I'm Dana, but I didn't say like the Bravo investigator or anything. And we were just chatting and I asked about if Gemma's ever been on a flight and she said yes. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. She was talking about just being excited to be in Toronto because she's never been. And then Jesse was really social. Both of them were exactly who they are on TV, which is just so funny. I mean, that's reality TV, right? I mean, they should be exactly who they are. They shouldn't be any different. And it was just really nice to speak to both of them. Jesse had some interesting things to say. He kind of, I don't know, I guess he kind of has no filter or he doesn't think a lot about like the rest of the season or the ramifications. But basically he was saying that like it gets a lot worse for Kyle as we go on. So that's not good. It was an interesting time for them to be coming just because, having an Instagram account, I sort of have a sense of what the audience likes and doesn't like. And the audience has not been liking Jesse Solomon too much lately, especially over the past week. So I thought it was sort of interesting timing. He still, even in person, tried to defend the situation a bit, just saying that like he thought it was the right thing to do to go to his bro first and this and that. But then he did say something to the effect of like, it's not like I would have done it if West wasn't okay with it. And then I tried to call him out on the fact that he said that it wouldn't stop him, but he was too tall. He didn't hear me. So really cool event. Got to chat with them for a bit. And then I go to sit down at my seat because it was like all assigned seating. And Jesse and Lindsay were not at my table, but they were sitting at my table and they had told us to sit down. So I go to sit down. Jesse and Lindsay are sitting there trying to make a TikTok, which is taking forever because Jesse is apparently very particular with his social media presence and wants it to look a certain way. So it took them forever to try to do. So I was just sitting there watching them make a TikTok, which is just so fun. The dinner was really good. I had salmon with pesto and I think it was like sweet potatoes. There was carrot cake. There was alcohol. I got a little toasty. And then Hey You sent us off with these amazing gift bags, which were just like all of these summer things, like sunglasses, a floaty, ingrown hair removal, sunscreen, like all of this just like summery stuff. And then the actual screening was at the Tiff Bell Lightbox, and they had like popcorn for everyone that was labeled Hey You and little chocolate bars and stuff. And then we watched last night's episode, and it was actually really funny to watch it like on a screen. I've never watched like a reality TV show in a movie theater before, but it was so fun to do, and it made the episode that much funnier. I don't know if it was as funny IRL, but it was so funny to just be sitting and watching with all of these people. So that was the event. It was so much fun. I hope I get invited to more of these things because I love telling you guys about it and I love getting like these little bits of tea. So that was so, so fun. But before we get into the recap of last night's Summer House, let's talk about Amanda Batula and Marie Claire. So she just did this interview with them talking about how she is just living for herself. I am all about Amanda Batula these days, and I am obsessed. So I'm going to read you guys this article from Marie Claire. It's called "I'm Amanda fucking Batula, the Summer House star on separating and starting over." When I take the Ludlow hotel elevator to the penthouse suite to meet Amanda Batula, it's been 1 month down to the day since announcing her divorce from Summer House co-star Kyle Cook. Batula is wearing a tan suede duster jacket and matching micro shorts, but swaps her photo shoot ready heels for brown Ugg slippers. Half glamorous, half the comfy bedbug viewers know and love her for from the reality show set in the Hamptons share house. She gives me a tight hug and joins me on the beige buccal couch. It's a loaded question, but I have to ask anyway. How are you, Amanda? Honestly, I feel like I'm on cloud nine. Unstoppable, she tells me. The past 2 weeks, I've never been happier. The couple's separation is a Richter scale shakeup in the Bravo universe. Cook 43 and Batula 34 started dating in Summer House's first season and were engaged by the end of season 3. After multiple postponements due to the COVID pandemic, they married on September 25th, 2021, in Batula's parents' backyard. But the breakup isn't exactly surprising to those who have followed the Kymanda roller coaster for the past 10 years. Cook is the founder of the alcoholic beverage brand Loverboy and has a new side gig as a DJ playing Unz Unz EDM on college campuses and in Connecticut casinos. He's boisterous, emotional, and considered the Peter Pan chapter president of Summer House. Batula is his foil in every way. The creative director and graphic designer who joined Loverboy full-time in 2019 but stepped back in 2025 is understated, sardonic, and a professional bedrotter. In almost every episode, viewers watch Batula fall asleep by 11 p.m. I mean, that's late. I fall asleep by like 8 p.m., so that's a joke. While Cook bar hops around the Hamptons until the parties died down. Rumors of Cook cheating, some confirmed, others unsubstantiated, occasionally followed him home and became unfortunate, uncomfortable plot points the two navigated on screen. It makes sense then why Bravo heads are drawing parallels between Batula and Ariana Madix, the Vanderpump Rules star, whose long-term boyfriend, Tom Sandoval, had an affair with their friend and fellow cast member, Raquel Leviss. Post-Sandoval, Madix's profile exploded. She played Chicago's Roxy Hart on Broadway, placed third on Dancing with the Stars season 32, and currently hosts Love Island USA on Peacock. Batula doesn't see it. Everyone wants this big Ariana Madix moment for women who go through a breakup, but her situation was so different and so awful, says the New Jersey native. There's really no comparison. Kyle and I are good. Even still, the Summer House star is receiving Maddox-level mountains of support. Every time she posts on Instagram, the comment section turned into a prayer circle of positivity. Girl who is going to be okay. And we love seeing you win from fans. Beautiful and strong. And red heart emojis from Real Housewives, Dorinda Medley, and Bronwyn Newport. She's feeling the love in her inner circle. She has a steadfast group of girlfriends, including fellow Summer House castmates, Sierra Miller, Paige DeSorbo, and Lindsay Hubbard, sending near constant I love you, I'm proud of you texts. I'm a good picker when it comes to girlfriends, Batula jokes. I ask about her father, Frank Batula, a fan favorite Summer House side character who initially rejected Cook's request for a marital blessing. My dad's not out there celebrating like everyone thinks he is, but he did send me flowers for Valentine's Day and a card that said Happy Independence Day. Batula is feeling happy in her independence. I'm usually a very codependent person, but in the past few months, maybe even longer, I feel really comfortable doing things on my own. She's living alone for the first time in a new Manhattan apartment, too. I don't have a couch yet, so the dogs and I spend most of our time in bed, which is what we would be doing anyway. Now, I think that this is really interesting for her to say that she's normally very codependent, but she's actually really thriving on her own. And I think a big part of that comes from it just started to happen slowly over time with Kyle being out more and more and more. And he even said, like, for the first 6 months of last year, he was only home for like 2 weekends or something. So over time, she probably just got used to it. And while she may have considered herself codependent at one point, she sort of didn't have a choice but to get used to it or, divorce him. And because he slowly over time started being home less and less and less, she got used to that. And now that she is on her own, she's realizing how easy it is because she's had literally years to get used to it. I'll just continue. So as we continue our chat, Batula tells me about her separation from Cook, the power of Prozac, why she'll never be ashamed of smoking weed, and what's next for her. This isn't a new chapter. It's a whole new book, as she puts it. Okay, deep breath. Can you detail the timeline of the separation? Amanda says, I moved out in November. We were separated, but agreed not to see other people. The plan was to date each other, work on our relationship, and take some space. But that space made us realize, well, maybe we want more space, that the separation should be permanent. There's been a lot of speculation that we broke up before Summer House season 10 started filming, that we've been separated for months, blah, blah, blah. But honest to God, we came to the decision to divorce a few days before we posted the announcement on Instagram on January 19th, 2026. We were on FaceTime talking about us. I said I wanted to put out a statement about our relationship, and that's when we decided to officially separate. We were also on FaceTime when we both posted our statements a few days later. It was a sad moment, but also a relief, and I'm really happy we did it together. Okay, this is interesting. So she says that she moved out in November. We know that they were broken up by the time of BravoCon. And yes, there have been rumors that they were split up prior to this season of Summer House. And those rumors have come from a legitimate source, i.e. Bravo and Cocktails. I know Amanda is saying otherwise, but they also were lying to us during the time that they were separated. I mean, with the whole her living or pretending to go into like Gemma's little house kind of thing. And then at BravoCon, they were pretending that we were all being crazy for all these rumors. So I don't know what's true, if I'm being honest. The next question is, tell me more about what ultimately led to the decision to divorce. And Amanda says, I could see what other people saw in us, why they didn't think we should be together. We both knew what needed to be done, but neither of us wanted to pull the trigger. It was really heavy. We were both struggling with the decision to call it quits, and that's where I faded away and lost myself a bit. But it just got to a point where I knew I had given the relationship everything I had, and there was no fight left in me. We looked at each other like, this isn't going to go anywhere. This is really interesting. I mean, we definitely see her fading away and losing herself. I feel like we see her sort of disassociate over the years, especially when Kyle says like horrific things to her, like you have no personality and you're not interesting and get some drive and get all of these things. She sort of, disassociates in a sense, right? And I feel like she's 100% right. She has put a lot into this relationship. And I think that there does just come a point where you don't feel that fight anymore. And I think that that makes a lot of sense. The next question says, on Summer House, you've mentioned feeling hidden in Kyle's shadow. Now that you're out of the relationship, do you feel a stronger sense of identity? And Amanda says, for years, I was very insecure, a quiet person. Kyle lights up the room when he walks in. He's the life of the party. That's why I fell in love with him. But it was easy to get lost behind that. His need to be social took over, and it made me nervous and lack a lot of confidence. That Amanda feels like a different person compared to who I'm becoming right now. Making the decision to separate was, yes, a weight lifted, but between my antidepressants, going off birth control, being in my 30s, every day I'm feeling more and more like myself and like a better person. I see the whole world differently. I have a different confidence now and give a lot of credit to the strong, powerful women who have been on the show with me for that. Witnessing them stand in their power, they've been great role models. Also, having my high school and college friends remind me of who I am, shaking me awake, saying, you can be your own person. That has definitely given me the boost to be like, you know what? You're right. I am an individual. Okay, I absolutely love that because I feel like sometimes you can get so beaten down in a relationship by the way the other person is treating you and speaking about you. I mean, literally, when he's saying things like you have no personality, you have no drive, if somebody is drilling those things into your head day after day after day, you start to think that about yourself. So I think it's great that she has so many friends and such a good support system that we're always reminding her and keeping her in check with, no, you are Amanda Batula, you are amazing, you can do great things, and didn't allow her to fall into the trap of believing these negative things about herself. The next question says, you've been very open about your mental health struggles with depression. Did your mental health journey contribute to the separation in any way? And Amanda says, yes and no. I was in such a low place, and when you're struggling like that, you don't want to do anything for yourself or anyone else. I would sit on the couch, spiral about the relationship, work, travel, and absolutely shut down. There was no world where I was capable of making decisions to help myself. When you're able to turn off the voices and nonsense in your head, it's much easier to see things for what they are. The antidepressant opened my eyes and I saw things differently. I knew more of what I was and wasn't able to tolerate, what I deserved and what I didn't, and the respect I needed. But just because I started taking medication, it didn't make me get a divorce. It just made me feel like me again. And I was able to see the relationship for what it was, recognize that it wasn't working, and that neither of us were happy. I think this makes a lot of sense because if you are so depressed and you're not even able to care for yourself, how are you able to even have the insight into like what's going on in your relationship, let alone even have the strength to work on it? So I feel like once she was on antidepressants and felt in a good way and then realized that it still was no longer worth the fight, I feel like that's what made her realize like this just isn't going to work. But I feel like being in your best headspace mentally is when you can truly make that decision. Amanda says, totally, I'm on Prozac too. Or no, wait, the interviewer says, I'm on Prozac too, and it does help mute the noise so you can be more objective when looking at your life. Plus, it gets easier to get out of bed in the morning. And Amanda said, can I tell you, Kyle's biggest beef with me for so long was that he'd have to be my alarm and wake me up. I wake up before my alarm clock every single day now. I'm up between 7 and 8 a.m. just staring at the ceiling. I'm a morning person now, which is crazy. That feels really good. Mind you, I don't get out of bed. I lay there like a rock on my phone or watching a show. I haven't changed that much. I'm just awake now. The next question is, I want you to discuss the internet's reaction to your relationship. For years, fans have been rooting for your breakup, for you to leave Kyle. How did that factor into your decision? And Amanda says, it used to make me angry. Then it made me sad, then confused. It's part of why it took me longer than it should have to call it quits because I needed to feel 100% secure in my decision and absolutely certain it was mine and mine alone, that it wasn't coming from production, my friends, my family, or the audience. Maybe I would have left sooner if I had ignored it all, but it was so hard to filter out. It wasn't like it was one comment calling you ugly. There were thousands of comments over the years. Why are these two people together? I also understood where people were coming from. They're watching the show and see us argue and not get along. But we had a whole relationship outside of filming, and we were working on things throughout, going to therapy and having conversations. There were also 3 seasons of us living together where things were good. It's unfortunate because viewers didn't get to see all these little moments of us having fun because when we were filming, the bigger story often was that we were fighting. But in those tiny moments, it was very obvious why we were together. Our housemates saw it and understood why we were in love. The interviewer says the online commentary is ramped up since your divorce announcement and with season 10 airing now. I see comments calling Kyle's behavior towards you toxic and emotionally abusive. How are you dealing with that? Amanda says it's horrible and so not helpful. We've already split up. It's done. I don't care how awful of a person you think Kyle was or how terribly you feel he treated me. To attack him when he's always also going through this separation while he's also dealing with the pain and the fallout of the relationship, don't beat a man when he's down. We still love each other very much. It was a huge fear of mine when we separated that he was going to get this treatment. It also stopped me from calling it quits on our relationship earlier because I don't want people to attack, hurt, or villainize him. He's not a bad person. We are two people who couldn't make it work. It's unfortunate, but he doesn't deserve the hate he's getting. Let me hate that man. He doesn't need the entire internet doing it. And the interviewer says, it's kind of crazy how I can call my family crazy. I've lived the experience, I have the authority, but you can't call them crazy. And Amanda says, exactly. I can tell Kyle to shut the fuck up. Sierra, Paige, and Lindsay can. If you lived in a house with us, you can tell Kyle whatever you want. Nobody else can. If you want to support me, then just support me. You don't have to also tear him down. I have so much love for Kyle and don't want to not have him in my life. It doesn't matter how much hate he's getting or how much positivity I'm getting because at the end of the day, it only matters that we're there for each other. Like with Paige and Craig. I know Paige really wanted them to remain on good terms, and it's really upsetting that it couldn't happen. That's why Kyle and I are both going above and beyond to make sure people know we're on the same team. You might be choosing sides, but even we don't have sides. We're still a unit here. Try to respect that, people. Okay, that's all well and fair enough to say now, but like they just split up. Once one of them starts dating, it's all going to change. You haven't really gone through the legal part of the process yet, right? Like you really don't know someone until like you're really divorcing them. And we haven't really gone through that process yet. I'm not saying that we have to tear Kyle down. I'm just saying, you know, it just doesn't necessarily mean that um you know, we have to support him necessarily either. Um, in terms of tearing him down, it's hard though because he is still coming up on the internet. Like he is still commenting on things. He's even saying negative things about her. Like he said something on the internet about like how the apartment looked, and people don't really have an understanding of how much it looked like a frat house. And then Amanda also made like a video and a comment as well in this article where she's like, I'm not going to let anybody tell me when or how often I can get high. I can do whatever I want. But Kyle said that to you, right? Like Kyle was the one who made these comments about you getting high. So I feel like it's a little bit contradictory for her to say, like, don't tear him down and he's going through stuff too, when she's also clapping back at him. You know what I mean? Like she's clapping back by saying, like, I can do whatever I want and smoking weed on the internet and stuff. She is responding to him. So in responding to him, you are saying, like, hey, dude, shut up about like these things that you're saying about me. So I sort of feel like the audience is trying to do that as well. The interviewer says, I want to rewind back to where your head was going into season 10. What was your headspace like when cameras went back up? And Amanda says, you can definitely tell I was at my wit's end with Kyle. There was a lot happening between us that spring, too, with him staying at a fan's house. We didn't go into the house on good terms, and I clearly was not holding back at all. Watching it back, I feel really bad. You can tell how furious I was, how fed up and frustrated I was with the relationship. It pains me to watch myself talk to and treat Kyle that way. That's not who I am, and seeing myself do that is a reminder of how hard a time I was going through. Sometimes I find myself thinking about all the good times we had and getting sad, but then Tuesday night comes around, I watch an episode, and I'm like, oh, right, that's why we are where we are right now. I will tell you that Kyle and I didn't fight the whole summer. Every episode will not be us mad at each other. It gets better before it gets worse. This is one of my favorite summers we've had at the house. It's a really good group of people living it. Nothing felt performative. It's raw and authentic, the honest mess we are. The interviewer says, it's interesting to hear you say that this is one of your favorite summers, considering months later, you and Kyle started the divorce process. And Amanda says, I think I knew the fallout with Kyle was inevitable, so I put our relationship aside and focused on my friendships in the house, which is probably why Kyle felt like I wasn't hanging out with him this summer, because I wasn't. I could have spent the whole summer spiraling with him, but I chose to find my own happiness on the weekends with people who love and support me. It would have been a very difficult summer to get through without Sierra. She is one of the kindest, most loving, loyal friends I've ever had. She sends me texts out of the blue, reminding me how strong, powerful, smart, and kind I am. I don't think she even realizes how much I need those texts. It's also meant so much to me how supportive West has been throughout the season, sometimes in ways I wasn't even aware of when filming. It's not performative, it's just really authentic to who West is. He checks Kyle and puts him in his place, and you'll continue to see him be there for me throughout the season. The interviewer says, I want to talk about the fight at the Apology Dune. Hearing Kyle say that you lack curiosity, drive, and personality, what was it like reliving that and watching that scene as a viewer? Amanda says, God, that was really rough. I definitely disassociated in that moment, like I said. You can see me shut down and go into my own world. I didn't even know he said half of those things because I couldn't hear him. No personality. A bitch has personality, okay? I wouldn't be on TV if I didn't. A lot of people checked in on me after the episode aired. Kyle even texted me and said it was a rough watch. The frustration and animosity outshined the love we had, and it became volatile. We could not see eye to eye or understand one another. The hatred came out. It was really difficult to relive, but it's a good reminder for both of us that we made the right decision to break up. The interviewer says, in that fight, you also mentioned the cheating rumors that you received in the DMs. Have more rumors come out since your separation announcement? Amanda says, I do feel that more people may start coming out of the woodwork. I've already seen some posts about him cheating and people confirming certain things, which doesn't make me feel great, but I can't say I didn't expect it given all the rumors I've heard. And the interviewer says, have any of the rumors been confirmed? Amanda says, they've never like confirmations. It's always like my friend's friend saw this or I heard from so and so. It's never the person themselves. Normally I'd send that stuff to Kyle, but it doesn't bother me anymore. I see it and there's no pit in my stomach. My heart doesn't sink. I'm just like, okay, well, good thing we called it. The interviewer says, I imagine some of these rumors are like months and years old. Amanda says, that part's annoying. Like, how am I finding out about new things that happened years ago? Where are my girls? Hello, do people have photos and no one shared anything? He's been wildly protected. I mean, that's true. And the interviewer says, protected by who? The Bravoverse, a boys club? Amanda says, no, not a boys club. Kyle's a good-looking man. If you're out drunk and you make out with him, maybe you tell your friends and share the photo with them, but your friends aren't going to blow up your spot. So I get it. It stays a secret. People also love being around him. He's the life of the party, is so much fun and brings energy into every space. People don't want to jeopardize that either, but you guys could have told me privately or given me a heads up, or come to me with something concrete. I want receipts, proof, timeline, screenshots, all of it. I'm just living my life now. If more shit comes out, it's just another reminder of why we are where we are. And if people see him out with a girl, don't DM me because I don't need to know. Let him make out in peace. That's funny. And she says, or the interviewer says, I want to pivot to Kyle bringing up that you smoke weed this season. As a viewer, it seems like a familiar defensive pattern of his. He did it with Carl Radke's drug use, and then he did it with you. And Amanda says, when Kyle brought it up on camera, it didn't have the same effect as when he outed Carl because I've always been very open about smoking weed. I've never been ashamed or tried to hide it. I smoke weed every night at the house on camera. We have a little balcony outside the primary bedroom where I go out to smoke my little joint. Bravo just doesn't air those scenes. There are little clips of my little weed pen right next to my LaFufu on the nightstand. Also, we have a THC drink called Flower Boy, which Kyle consumes himself. So what the hell is the problem? He doesn't like that I smoke it, but let me tell you, I do what I want with my body. You're destroying your liver, I'm destroying my lungs. We'll both die happy. The interviewer says, it did seem like he was trying to weaponize it against you. And Amanda said, he absolutely was. He was trying to shame me, make me seem like I'm a bad person since I get high every night before I go to sleep. Some people get high all day. People go to work and walk around high. I'm not a social high. I need to be on the couch in my own space before bed. It doesn't affect my lifestyle in any way. That's why it was so crazy for him to say that. He really thought he had something on me there. And then the interviewer says, was your recent TikTok vaping into the camera with Olivia Dean's Be My Boyfriend playing your response to when the episode aired? And Amanda said, yeah, I've been taking little jabs on social media to take ownership and say I'm not going to be shamed for smoking weed. It's legal. I'm not doing anything crazy. I can do whatever, whenever the fuck I want, as the great Olivia Dean said herself. So again, when she makes this video and she's like, I can do whatever I want, she's responding to Kyle calling her out and trying to make her seem like she's a bad person. So why can't we call him out, right? I just do feel like it's a little contradictory. And then the interviewer says, do you have any interest in going into the weed business? I see a lot of jokes online about you starting a weed line. And Amanda says, I don't want to be the stoner girl and have it be my whole image, but I definitely want to explore more of the weed space. I will not be starting a business on my own. I watched someone very close to me start one, and it's a lot of very hard work, but I would love to come on to an existing brand and do my own line within it, whether it's my own strain, joints, papers, grinders, bongs, or smoking accessories. And then the interviewer says, this is a perfect segue into your career. You've talked about sacrificing your professional ambitions for Kyle and wanting to carve out your own path separate from his. Now that you're separated, what do you see for your career? And Amanda says, I'm leaning into content creation and the influencer thing, but I really want to get my hands on a brand and submerge myself. I'd love to come on as a guest creative director and work with the on staff to create something together so it's not just me promoting XYZ. Similar to my swim collab with South Moon Under, where whether it's a long-term partnership where we're able to create together, that's what fills my cup. Anything I'm passionate about, I'm willing to get my hands on. Fashion, jewelry, fragrance, pet products, bedding. I absolutely love that for her. I can't wait to see Amanda shine and start doing her own thing and creating her own brands, working with brands, and just doing something outside of Loverboy. The interviewer says, your relationship aside, we've seen you grow up on the show. If 25-year-old Amanda from season 1 was sitting right here, what advice would you have for her? And Amanda says, I would tell her the same thing that Sierra and Paige told me later in life. You are so much more than your relationship with Kyle. You are Amanda fucking Batula. You shouldn't feel insecure. You have so much going for you. You are loved by so many, you are loved by so many people. Also, get on Prozac now. The interviewer says, what about advice for people in relationships having issues with compatibility? And Amanda says, if you're sitting here hoping they can be a different person, you need to walk away. And that's good that she realizes that. That's the biggest pill to swallow, not to fall in love with someone's potential, but to love and accept them for who they are, which is a problem that Kyle made. He refused to accept Amanda for who she was. This is just me talking. People keep telling me that I knew who I married and that Kyle was always this way. But when you're younger and you meet somebody out at a club, you don't expect them to constantly be clubbing throughout your entire relationship. Also, well into their 40s, quite frankly. You expect people to mature, not to change, but to grow up. And with growth comes change. But that may never change. And sometimes love is not enough. The interviewer says, what about prenups? And Amanda says, everyone needs a prenup. It doesn't matter if you make millions of dollars or how in love you are. It's like health insurance. You get it to protect yourself if something happens. Prenups are also to avoid being responsible for someone else's debt. Kyle has this lover boy debt from a business loan he took out before we got married, and everyone's freaking out about it. If the business can't pay it back, then it's Kyle's responsibility. To my knowledge and his understanding, the debt doesn't involve me in any way, but a prenup would have protected me 100% from it. Again, I still think she should have done it. The interviewer says, you and Kyle are co-dog parents. You work together on Summer House and In the City, which airs later this year. What do you hope for in your future relationship? And Amanda says, I like being around him and in his space. I just never like being responsible for him. Being able to enjoy each other's company and then go home whenever I want without worrying about him is going to change our whole relationship. It'll be so much easier for us to just be friends again. Like, let me host an event and have Kyle DJ it. That's what I expect from our friendship, to see each other, hug, smile, and ask how each other is doing in life. I hope I meet his next girlfriend. I'll give her a talking to. This is crazy that she's even open to that. I mean, am I being crazy to think that this is just going to go down the shitter, that they are just so early on into their separation that they have no idea what's coming? Because this is so amicable, but I just can't imagine this going forward like this. The interviewer says, enough about Kyle. Are you dating? And Amanda says, I'm like having such trouble talking today. She says, I am manifesting a boyfriend, but just a boyfriend. No one who's looking for anything serious. I want to have fun with someone my age or younger since I've always dated older. For now, while I heal, I just want to flirt and make out, to be taken on dates and just to enjoy being hot and happy. I'll find a husband later down the road, or maybe not. Absolutely love this for her. It just shows that she knows exactly what she's looking for right now. She's not trying to jump into another relationship. She knows she's hot. She just wants to have fun with people. And you can tell how much insight she has into herself and what she wants. And I'm just so happy that the antidepressants have really been able to help her in that regard. The interviewer says, what about your future? What do you want for this new era, Amanda? Amanda says, when I first thought about leaving Kyle, I was so scared about starting over and having to find someone again. I'm 34. I'm not getting younger. Women have an unfortunate timeline when it comes to having children, and that freaked me out. But I think because of the medication and being in the headspace that I am, I'm not afraid anymore. I'm in a really good place with my mental health. I'm not ready to get pregnant right now anyway. I got another swimsuit shoot coming up, so I can't be having any buns in the oven. Fortunately, I can freeze my eggs, and there are many things I can do to hopefully give myself a shot at having kids later. I'm not trying to do any of the math of like, if I had a kid by 40, then I'll be 60 when they're in college, or plan too much in the future. The interviewer says, what I'm hearing is that you're just open in general, open to change to wherever life takes you. And Amanda says, I used to be so afraid of change. In my home growing up, we had these cast iron railings that my parents wanted to replace with beautiful solid wooden ones. I literally handcuffed myself to the cast iron railings and cried when the carpenter came to remove them because I didn't want them to change anything. This is the first time I'm looking forward to change and seeing it as a really good thing. What's meant for me will always find me. Things will happen when they're supposed to. I'm living in the moment, which is something I don't think I've done in a while. We're keeping our heads above water. We're binge watching TV and we're working. We're taking our Prozac, smoking our weed, and cuddling our dogs. This article, I am just so proud of Amanda. You know, so many people come out of relationships like this, especially one where you are codependent and where you are afraid of change. And we may want to judge her for taking as long as she did, but look at her now, right? Look how far she's come. She has finally seen the light. It really doesn't matter how long it took. And I think, like we've kind of talked about, I think a big part of her staying in this relationship as long as she did was because she wasn't in her best headspace in terms of her mental health. But now that, she's got her mental health in its the best place that it's been in years, and she's on Prozac, you can tell how much more personality she has. You can tell how much happier she is. Every photo that she posts, every article that she's doing, she is smiling ear to ear. I have never, even when we saw Amanda back in season one being really happy with Kyle, I have never seen Amanda this smiley and this happy. And it's just so interesting, again, the way that Kyle would portray her as like not interesting and having no personality and not being fun. And I think that she just, I hate to say this and don't make fun of me, but I think she's gotten her sparkle back, right? Like she's pulling a Brittany Cartwright. And I feel like, sometimes being in a relationship or being around certain people can bring out the worst side of you. I bring this up a lot, but it kind of reminds me of Calibria and Edmund from last season of Love is Blind, the Denver season. Because Calibria kept saying to Edmund, like, you're bringing out this terrible side of me, right? And sometimes the person that you with or the people that you surround yourself with can bring out this bad side of you that isn't necessarily true to who you are. And maybe the best parts of you are more brought out by the people that fill your cup and support you and make you happy, right? So now that Amanda is separating herself from somebody who was literally dragging her down and saying horrible things about her and spending all this time with people who are constantly uplifting her and supporting her and telling her how amazing she is, she's leaning into that, right? Because I mean, like, in my own life, like when I've applied for jobs, for example, not anytime recently, but in the past, you apply for these jobs over and over again. You apply for tons and tons of jobs. You don't get the job. And then you question, is it me? Is there something wrong with me? Or even in dating, you have a guy tell you that you're an idiot over and over and over again. And eventually you start to believe it, right? And so I'm glad that this relationship, even though there's been moments where she felt dragged down by him or she started to believe the things that he was saying, thankfully, she's had just such an amazing support system in her life with friends and family and whatever to make sure that she didn't get sucked down into that. I've talked about this like so many times before, where like when I broke up with my ex, I was supposed to be going on a date with somebody else, and my ex had convinced me that I had like no interest, no passions, no nothing. And so I walked up to a colleague and with like a piece of paper, I'm like, hey, can you tell me what all your interests and hobbies are? Because I'm going on a date tonight and I don't have any and I need to come off interesting. And my colleague was like, Dana, you do have interests and hobbies. Just because your ex didn't think that those were like important doesn't mean that they didn't exist. And you need to remember that like you had this whole life before him. You were interesting before him. You had a personality before him. Just because somebody is telling you you are all these things doesn't mean that they are, right? So this is the year of Amanda Batula. I am so happy for her. I love the way that she's smiling. I love the way that she's living. I love that she just has so much more spirit about her. And it's also something that I can say about this past season, because we are between her and Sierra, quite frankly, with both of them being like on the right meds. I feel like we're getting such a different side to Amanda and Sierra where they are just stronger. They are more hard and fast in their convictions. They're funny and they just put people in their place. And I just kind of love that. All right, let's get into the episode. And this was like a really funny episode of Summer House. Again, I don't know if it was as funny as maybe it came off watching it on screen, like in a movie theater with a bunch of people, but I thought this episode was really hilarious. So everyone is getting ready for the Renaissance party that they're going to be having. Everybody's getting all dressed up. And Carl and Lindsay have this moment where she's dressed as a queen because that's what she's wearing. And he sees her coming down the stairs and he sort of doesn't know what to do with it. So Lindsay's like, you need to bow. So he bows to her. And then Carl gets all excited to the camera being like, maybe Lindsay and I will be friends again. And then they flash to Lindsay's confessional, who's like, Carl who? And it's just so funny because I feel like this is going to be like a continuous theme, I guess, where Carl is still kind of dead set on him and Lindsay becoming friends again one day. This is something that he's constantly mentioning in press, how they were only together for 2 years, but they were friends for so many years, and we really need to remember that. And there was so much friendship there, so he's hoping that they get back there. But the thing about Lindsay is she is so good at cutting people off. Like when she is no longer interested in you, she forgets you exist, which is great in terms of being able to get over people. And so I just really don't think Lindsay's ever going to kind of give into this. I feel like she's here to do her job. Carl is also there and, she kind of has to put up with that. But like, I mean, I would love to see them be friends again one day. I would even love to see them go on like a play date with Gemma, which would be wild. But I just feel like as much as Lindsay is just sort of placating to him and being polite, I don't think she has any interest in, quite frankly, ever speaking to him again, let alone being friends with him. So, in terms of the party dress up, Sierra is dressed as a rat with the bubonic plague. Now, it is pretty typical for Sierra at these costume parties to dress in a way that desexualizes her, because we have heard her talk throughout the years about how men typically look at her in a sexualized way, especially at these costume parties where people do tend to, slut it up and try to look like sexual in some way. But I feel like because that's sort of been like a running theme in Sierra's life, which we're going to talk about quite a bit later, I feel like that's part of why she does that with the costumes. She's trying to be like, you know what, I'm going to look as non-sexual as possible so that I can just be me and feel comfortable and don't have to worry about being hit on or being sexualized, right? I can imagine that that's very demeaning. Sierra and Amanda are crawling through the grass in their costumes, and Kyle tells the camera that watching Amanda makes him remember what attracted to him to her in the first place, because she's fun to be around and has a great sense of humor. And it's funny to hear him say that when literally last week at Apology Dune, he's saying that she has no personality and that she isn't fun. Now, I do believe him when he says that these are the reasons that he fell in love with her in the first place. And I do think that Amanda is having like one of her better summers because, like I said, she's in her best mental health space that she's been in years. And so she's just sort of leaning into her friendships and having fun with people. And that's why it's interesting to hear Kyle say these things about her only a week ago, when it's clear that when she's not around him or when she's with her friends, she is quite fun and she is having a good sense of humor. So then we get a little bit more information about Dara. So she tells us that she dated Wes for 6 months, 3 years ago, and how he's the best guy unless you're falling in love with him. And basically, it ended between them for the same reasons all his relationships do, that he just like can't commit. Now, I thought that this was sort of interesting because for them to have dated for 6 months, that is a lot longer than he dated Sierra. He dated Sierra for like 2 months. And this was 3 years ago. He dated Sierra 2 years ago. And while I think Jesse asking Wes to make out with Sierra is absolutely not okay, I just think it's sort of interesting that Dara is now part of this group. She's interested in a bunch of different guys in the group. And it's just sort of fine with West in a different way than it is with Sierra, even though he dated Dara longer. I mean, it was longer ago, but only by a year, right? 6 months is a lot longer than a couple of months, but he also wasn't on the show with her. I don't know. So Darren and KJ are talking at the party, and he's like, "Oh, you're so pretty." And he doesn't seem to realize that they have already met because there was the singles event that they all threw for Ben, right? So she calls him out on that, and she's like, "Do you not remember meeting me at the singles event?" And he's like, "Oh, your hair is different. It's like curly." And she's like, "Yeah, it's less curly today." I don't know. If they, in real life, they are together now, which I think is really cute. And if they do end up getting married, this would be a really cute story for their wedding, right? To be like, the second time I met you, I forgot that I even had met you before, and now we're in love. So kind of here for that. Now, Lindsay goes up to Sierra to let her know that Wes asked Jesse if they could make out in a joking way. And I love that Lindsay is coming in this place this year because it's sort of like she's not involved in anyone else's drama. She's got her own life. She's not even like that involved in any of these people's like lives day to day. So I felt like this was the perfect role for her to sort of come in as like the shit disturber in a way. But in a sense, she's not in trouble at all, right? Like she didn't do anything wrong. And this is something that Sierra wanted her to know. But Sierra is upset by this, and she's kind of holding it in, which we'll get back to in a minute. Now, Bailey, poor Bailey, this girl is so beautiful, and she is just so down in the dumps. She has the worst confidence because of her ex. So at the party, she's trying to work on her flirting, and Amanda is trying to like coach her in this regard. She's like, "Okay, why don't you practice on West?" So Bailey tries to flirt with West. She's like, "You're the hottest you've ever looked." He seems put off by it. Like he seems so confused. And even though like this is supposed to be sort of a joke and gimmicky, why is he put off by it? She's hot. Like, why is nobody into Levi and Bailey? Like, first of all, I'm obsessed with them as characters just because I love their friendship together and I just love how they can just do their own thing and that they've been able to make friends with the rest of the group in this real organic way without coming off fake or forced. But why doesn't Wes think she's hot? She is hot. Now, Bailey tells the camera that she used to be so good at flirting when she moved to New York, but she's just lost her confidence. And I really relate to her in this regard. I feel like when you date someone who's constantly beating you down, which we basically have already talked about with Kyle and Amanda, you have someone telling you that you're not pretty or that you're not interesting and all of these things. If you don't have that support system in place, like Amanda had, where she had her friends constantly telling her, no, you're amazing, no, everything he's saying is incorrect, you do lose your confidence, right? And it's just so crazy to me because Bailey is so interesting, accomplished, beautiful. Like, I absolutely, it makes me sad to see someone who looks like that, who is so accomplished, who is on TV, who has like a hit podcast, the It Girl podcast, which just got signed with iHeart. And she's just like fucking stunning. She could model. So it just makes me insane when a girl like that gets so dumbed down by someone that they don't think they're worthy. That just makes me really sad. So then we get this scene where Sierra gets emotional and she and Mia go upstairs to talk. And she's obviously upset about what Lindsay told her about Jesse asking West if they could make out. And she starts crying about how she feels like men just want to experience her sexually, and she wants a best friend who she can just tell anything to and will protect her. Now, this is something that we've heard Sierra talk about previously. I feel very much the same way about myself. I am not somebody that, like, I don't look anything like Sierra. Obviously, I'm not a model, I'm not hot. But in my life, men have only ever wanted to be with me sexually. They have never wanted a relationship with me. This has been like a running theme in my life, which, you know, relates to all of the other things that we were talking about with Bailey and the confidence and all this and that. But I really relate to what she's talking about here because I've basically built walls up myself where, like, I went on a date with a guy. This was like several years ago, but like I hadn't been on a date in years and years and years. And then this was during COVID. I went on this one date with this guy. And he just was very forward sexually. Like the date was amazing. We talked for 4 hours. It was a really good date. But like he told me what his penis looked like. Okay, I realized how bad that sounds. And it was so out of context. And it's just like, Dana, obviously this guy's an idiot. But regardless, he was like sending me like shirtless selfies and he was asking me to send selfies and stuff. And I was just put off by it because I want to know that a guy is into me for my personality and not for my body. Not that anybody's into me for my body. I just mean like I want to know that you are here because you want to be in a relationship, not because you're just looking for a hookup. So whenever a guy would come at me really early on making sexual statements or like sexual jokes, it just really turns me off and I'm put off by it because my brain just goes to, oh, that's all they're looking for from me. And I feel like Sierra experiences the same thing a lot in her life where she'll like meet these guys who are interested in her sexually, but then they don't want to be in a relationship with her, which just ends up sort of getting into her head. And it's like, well, why don't people want to be with me? Is there something wrong with me? Why do people only look at me in like this sexual way? Now, me personally, I just like stopped dating because it just became this thing for me where it was affecting my like my soul to such a level where I'm like, why does nobody want to be with me? What is wrong with me as a person? And then once I just removed dating from my life, quite frankly, I've never been happier because I can't be disappointed, right? But I completely understand where Sierra is coming from because whenever somebody comes at you in a sexual way, even if they are interested in you in more than that, it's that sort of defense mechanism that she has ingrained in her because of all of her experiences with men, which I feel like is so validating and so true to something that I personally have experienced. So I can really relate to what she's talking about. Then we get this scene of Dara and KJ going on a date and they really hit it off. And I really like how forward she is. She's really like open and funny and flirty. And she was flirting with other people too. She was flirting with Ben. She was flirting with all these other people. But like her and KJ really seem to have hit it off, which again, they are dating in real life. And I think they're really cute together. I really like her vibe too. And I also just think she's insanely beautiful. Like I almost can't stop staring at her. I feel like she has such an interesting look. I'm drawn into her deep brown eyes. I'm really into her. Then we get this scene where Ben joins Carl at Soft Bar to see the progress. And Carl talks about how Kyle didn't invest in Soft Bar because he says he's not in the position to right now. We all know that Kyle is sort of going through it with Loverboy. He has had to no longer take a salary. He's had to DJ to make ends meet. But Carl tells the camera that back in 2019, he invested $15,000 in Loverboy. And in 2019, he didn't have a lot of money, but he was really invested in Kyle and their friendship and in Loverboy. So he was sort of hoping Kyle would do the same. And he's kind of put off by the fact that Kyle didn't. I understand what Carl is saying 100%. But if he doesn't have the money right now, then he doesn't have the money, right? Like, timing is everything. And I completely understand where Carl is coming from. Like to have this expectation that your best friend will invest in you the same way that you invested in them. But if you physically just don't have the money to invest, I feel like there's that. I also think it's interesting that we never really address the fact that all of these people make probably like at least $1 million on this show. So when Kyle is constantly talking about how he's had to take a pay cut and all of these things, it's like, but what about your summer house paycheck, right? Like, I just don't understand. And so on one vein, I'm like, if he doesn't have the money, he doesn't have the money. But then it's like, what about your summer house money? But then again, I don't know, right? Like, it's not fair for any of us to talk about anybody's financial situation when we really don't know. But that's a tough one. That's a tough one. So the next weekend, Bailey and Levi decide to dress as plants to scare the house, and it works for a lot of them. And I thought this was so funny because, again, these two are just so funny together. They literally look like the plants from or the grass from Bad Bunny's halftime performance. They end up scaring half of the house, and they're funny together. They laugh together. They don't take themselves too seriously. They want to have fun with the house, right? They are such a perfect fit. And I'm sorry that I can't stop saying it. I just feel like it is so hard to find a good fit for this show. And when you do, it's just like magic. So then we get a final scene of Jesse pulling Sierra aside to talk. And basically, he tells her that he feels bad, that she's upset for him asking Wes if he could make out with her. He tells her that he thought that they were getting sort of flirty and he wanted to clear it from Wes' perspective in case it was something that he moved forward with, but he didn't mean anything by it. And Sierra's like, so you wanted to make out with me, but you didn't mean anything by it? Like, what does that even mean? And he's like, well, I don't know what my intentions were, but I thought it made sense to ask my boy first to see if he still felt a type of way about it. And if he did, I wouldn't go there. Excuse you, Jesse. You totally said to Wes that it wouldn't stop you, which is funny because he said the same thing at the Hey You event. Like, oh, I wouldn't have gone there if he wasn't okay with it. Sir, you totally would have. You totally would have. So Sierra tells him that not talking to her first and talking to Wes makes her feel like he looks at her as a sexual conquest and like now it's his turn. She asks him if making out with her would be only as a joke. And he says that he felt like they had an attraction to each other, but he doesn't know what he wants. Now, I think that this is really interesting because he was telling us in the last episode that he's ready to be in a relationship and that Wes isn't ready to be in a relationship and that he is on the same level as Sierra and that they want the same thing. But now here he is saying, I don't know what I want and I don't know what my intentions were. And that makes it even worse for Sierra because she's like, this concept of making out with me as a joke, as if I'm like an object, is gross to me. And I completely understand where she's coming from. Now, Sierra says that they have had blurred lines and she's upset because she has expressed that she wants a boyfriend, she wants a best friend, she wants to get married, but he's just looking at her as a joke. And then she's like, if you really liked me, you would be asking Wes for permission to date me, not to make out with me. He apologizes again for making her feel like an object and says he doesn't look at her that way. And then Sierra tells the camera that she can't put all of this on Jesse, and it's actually 75% on her because she's convinced in her head that guys only want to hook up with her and not take her seriously. Okay, I don't think that this is 75% on her. I think that the way that she's feeling is absolutely valid, and I feel like the way that Jesse is acting is just supporting those feelings that she has, right? Because if he's saying like, we would make out as a joke and I don't know what my intentions are and like it wouldn't be that serious, why are you treating her that way when you know that she wants a boyfriend and she wants a serious relationship? And so it really bothers her that he's continuing to look at her in this sexualized way when they are actually real friends. And he knows that that's not who she is and that's not what she's looking for. But the thing about Jesse is he is so blinded by her looks that he can't even like see past that. I do believe he likes her as a person, but all he's ever said about her is that she's hot, she's hot, she's hot. He's constantly touching her, constantly flirting with her. And I really do feel like the way that she's thinking in her head about only wanting to hook up with her as like a conquest, I think she's right. Like, I don't think that that's just something she's getting in her head about. I think that is exactly what would happen. I think that they would make out or hook up or whatever. And then he'd be like, oh, you know what? I'm not sure if I want to be in a relationship. I think that's exactly what would happen. And it's really, what I think is really interesting in this is how there isn't a moment where Sierra says anything like, okay, but Jesse, by the way, I'm not interested in you like that. And we have noticed that Sierra does give in to a lot of the flirting, right? She's always like holding hands with him and cuddling with him and leaning into him and stuff. So you have to put a little bit of blame on her as well for leaning into that. And for the first time ever after this episode, I actually think maybe she does have feelings for him. Because at first I couldn't figure out why she was giving into that. But then after watching this episode, I think that the fact that she doesn't say to Jesse, that's never going to happen between us. I don't feel that way about you. The fact that instead she says, you know that I'm looking for a boyfriend, you know that I'm looking for something serious, and why didn't you just ask me out or ask West if it was okay to ask me on a date? That implies that she would possibly be open to going on a date. And I think one of the reasons she ends up getting so upset is because maybe she does have feelings for him, which I feel like I'm crazy to say because, like, ew, you can do so much better, Sierra, quite frankly. But like, I think that this is why she's so upset. I feel like she felt like they were real friends. He sees beyond her looks, but at the same time, they're flirty, they're cuddly, they're all these things. And so maybe, just maybe, they could be in a real relationship if he was ever ready. But now here he is saying, like, he didn't mean anything by it and it would have been a joke and he doesn't know what his intentions are. And this is all just so unfair to someone who you know isn't like that. You know that she wants a serious relationship. And so why would you even try to rock that boat by like kissing her or making out with her or even asking her on a date if you are not 100% sure of what you want? Because you know that you could lose her in the process. You could also lose West in the process. But I think the biggest takeaway from this is that I think Sierra has serious feelings for Jesse. And she's hurt that he went to West to ask if they could make out as opposed to wanting to ask her on a date. And I think that if they had gone on a date, she would have, felt a lot differently about their relationship and may have actually considered it. But the fact that he's only talking to Wes or talking to other people about her in a sexualized way, it leans into those fears that she has. But I do believe that in this case, her fears are true. I really do believe that is all that Jesse is looking for from her. All right, you guys, that is the end of the episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. You can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at The Bravo Investigator. Join the Patreon at patreon.com/The Bravo Investigator podcast. Join the Facebook group and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And I love you, BBs. I will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Bravo Investigator podcast. For more content, head over to patreon.com/The Bravo Investigator podcast. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at The Bravo Investigator. If you enjoyed the show, leave a 5-star review. Love you, BBs. See you next time.